"Find somewhere else to die. You're useless now." Those were the last words my daughter said to me in my own house. And 3 days later, I found out she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. I didn't cry when she said it. That's the strange part. No screaming, no begging, no dramatic collapse, just silence. Because when your own child looks you in the eyes and tells you that you've outlived your usefulness, something inside you doesn't break. It freezes. And then, it changes. 2 months ago, my name was Margaret Sullivan. A simple woman. A devoted wife for 43 years. A mother who thought she did everything right. My husband, Robert, had just passed away. Heart attack. Sudden. No warning. One moment he was sitting in his chair. The next, gone. And just like that, my entire world collapsed. Or at least, I thought it did. Because I had no idea. The real storm hadn't even started yet. At the funeral, my daughter Victoria played her role perfectly. Tears at the right moments. Soft voice. Gentle hugs. "Mom, I don't know how you're going to manage all this alone." She held my hand like she cared. But looking back now, that wasn't concern. That was calculation. A few days later, she started visiting more often. Not alone. She brought her husband, Kevin. Always well-dressed. Always polite. But always watching. Judging. They would sit across from me at dinner. Smiling. And then slowly corner me. "Mom, this house is too big for you. You need something simpler. Somewhere safer, easier." And then came the brochures. Retirement homes. Senior living communities. Places with smiling old people on the front. And loneliness hidden behind the pictures. I should have seen it. I really should have. But grief makes you blind. And I trusted her. She was my daughter. 6 weeks after Robert died, everything changed. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I was still sleeping in the guest room. I couldn't bring myself to enter our bedroom. Too many memories. Too much pain. The doorbell rang. I opened it. And there she was. Victoria. With Kevin. And 2 large suitcases. "Mom," she said casually. "We've made a decision." Something in her tone felt off. Cold. Final. "Kevin got a promotion," she continued. "We need to move into the city, immediately." She stepped inside, like she already owned the place. "This house is perfect for us." I blinked. Confused. "Move in?" I asked. "But this is my home." That's when it happened. Her mask slipped. Just for a second. But I saw it. The truth. "Actually, Mom." Her voice dropped. "According to Dad's will, everything belongs to me." The words didn't just hurt. They hit. Like something physical. "No, that's not possible," I whispered. But she didn't hesitate. No mistake. Dad knew I'd handle things better. Then she looked at me. Like I was nothing. "You were just the wife." 43 years. Reduced to 3 words. And then, she said the thing I will never forget. The thing that changed everything. "Find somewhere else to die." I packed my life in silence. 2 suitcases. 43 years, folded into fabric and memories. And as I walked out, she checked her watch. Like I was making her late. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't even imagine, was this. That wasn't the end of my story. That was the beginning of hers falling apart. I didn't look back. Not at the house. Not at my daughter. Because some doors, once they close, even looking back at them feels like weakness. Kevin placed my bags in the car. Like he was throwing away trash. "Margaret, you'll actually enjoy your independence," he said with a faint smile. But his eyes, they never met mine. Independence? That word felt like a joke that day. Because the truth was, I was homeless. The car started moving. I kept staring out the window. And that house, the same house where I had spent my entire life, slowly faded into the distance. That house where I celebrated Victoria's birthdays, took care of Robert during his illness, built every corner with my own hands. And today, I wasn't even a guest anymore. I had been removed. "This should work," Kevin said as he stopped the car. I looked up. Sun set in. A $49 a night motel. Thin walls, old carpets, and a smell that time itself couldn't erase. Victoria pulled out $200 from her purse, handed it to me like it meant nothing. This should cover a few days until we sort out the accounts. We? That was my money, my life, and she was giving me an allowance from it. The door closed, and I was alone. I sat on the bed, and for the first time, I started thinking, in just 3 hours, what had I become? A widow? No, a homeless woman, because of my own daughter. But then, something started bothering me. Robert. He wasn't like this. He was careful, precise. Every document, every decision, was planned. I remembered his will. We had talked about it years ago, and I was certain. This wasn't it. Something's wrong, I whispered to myself. The next morning, I turned on the motel's slow Wi-Fi and searched for one name. Harrison Fitzgerald, Robert's lawyer, the man who handled everything important in our lives. His office was across town. Even the bus fare felt expensive, but I had to go. When I walked into his office, he looked genuinely surprised. Margaret? My dear, I was wondering where you were. I froze. Where I was? I tried calling your house several times. He said, Victoria told me you were traveling. Traveling? My daughter had lied about me. Mr. Fitzgerald. My voice shook slightly. I need to talk about Robert's will. He nodded, but then his expression changed. Of course. Didn't Victoria give you your copy? My heart dropped. Copy. Yes. After the reading, I gave her the original and several copies. Reading? What reading? Now he looked concerned. Margaret, you were supposed to be there. My breathing got heavier. No one told me. Silence filled the room. And in that silence, a terrifying realization began to form. Victoria hadn't just lied. She had hidden everything. Harrison, I said, my voice unsteady but controlled, what do I do now? He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, studying me carefully, as if reassessing everything he thought he knew about the situation. Then something shifted in his expression. The polite professionalism was still there, but underneath it, there was now urgency. Margaret, he said slowly, choosing each word with precision, what your daughter has done is extremely serious. This isn't just a misunderstanding or a family disagreement. This is fraud. Legal, prosecutable fraud. The word hung in the air between us. Fraud. I had never imagined I would hear that word associated with my own daughter. My Victoria. The little girl I had raised, protected, sacrificed everything for. And yet, the evidence was sitting right in front of me. But she had documents, I said quickly, almost defensively, as if I still wanted to believe there was some explanation that would make all of this less ugly. She showed me papers. Everything looked official. There were signatures, stamps, it all seemed real. Harrison nodded, already anticipating that. Then those documents were either forged or taken from an earlier draft of the will. But this, he tapped the paper in front of him firmly. This is the final, legally binding version. Signed, witnessed, and notarized. There is no ambiguity here. My hands tightened in my lap. You said Robert updated it 6 months ago. Why would he do that? Harrison exhaled slowly. Because he was concerned. Concerned about what? He looked directly into my eyes now. About Victoria. The words landed heavier than anything else he had said so far. For a moment, I couldn't respond. Because deep down, I already knew. I had seen it over the years. The entitlement. The subtle arrogance. The way she dismissed people she considered beneath her. The way she spoke to me sometimes, like I was an inconvenience. He mentioned, Harrison continued, that he felt Victoria had developed a dangerous sense of entitlement, especially regarding money. He was worried about how she might behave, particularly after his death. A cold realization crept in. Robert had seen this coming. He had predicted it. There's something else you need to understand, Harrison added, turning the document slightly toward me. The clause regarding Victoria's inheritance is very specific. It's not just a suggestion or a moral guideline. It's a condition. A condition I repeated quietly. Yes. If she fails to treat you with dignity, respect, and proper care after Robert's passing, her entire inheritance is automatically revoked. My heartbeat quickened. And then he said clearly, it transfers to you. The room went completely still. So you're telling me, I struggled to form the words, that not only did she lie, not only did she throw me out of my own house. I paused, the weight of it all finally catching up to me. But she also lost everything? Harrison gave a single, firm nod. Yes. Based on what you've told me, she has violated that clause in the most extreme way possible. A strange mix of emotions surged through me. Shock, anger, betrayal, and something else, something I hadn't felt in weeks. Clarity. For the first time since Robert's death, the fog in my mind began to lift. This wasn't just grief anymore. This was reality. And the reality was, I had been deceived, manipulated, discarded. What about the house? I asked, my voice steadier now. Harrison didn't hesitate. It's yours. Legally, unquestionably yours. And at this moment, your daughter is occupying it under false pretenses. I let that sink in. My house. The same house I had been forced out of, like I didn't belong there. And the money? You are entitled to approximately $23 million from Robert's estate, plus the $10 million that was originally allocated to Victoria. That brings your total inheritance to $33 million. $33 million. The number echoed in my mind, but strangely, it didn't excite me. Not yet. Because this wasn't about money anymore. This was about justice. So, what happens next? I asked. Harrison leaned forward slightly, his tone now decisive. Now, we act. First, we notify the authorities. What Victoria has done qualifies as elder abuse, fraud, and likely forgery. Second, we secure your assets and freeze any accounts she may have accessed. And third, he paused, a faint but knowing smile appearing on his face. We call your daughter. I felt something shift inside me again. Not fear this time. Not sadness. Something stronger. Resolve. Because somewhere across the city, Victoria was sitting in my house, probably believing she had one. She had no idea that in just a few hours, everything she thought she owned, everything she believed she controlled, was about to be taken away. And this time, there would be no one to protect her. Harrison didn't waste a second. The moment we finished going through the will, his office turned into something else entirely. It no longer felt like a quiet legal space. It felt like the center of an operation. Calls were made immediately. Not casual calls, urgent ones. He contacted the bank first, then the estate management office, and then, without even asking me again, the authorities. I sat there in the leather chair, hands resting on my lap, trying to process how my life had flipped in less than 24 hours. Just the night before, I had been sitting in a cheap motel room, wondering how I would survive the week. And now, I was listening to a lawyer calmly explaining how to reclaim $33 million and press charges against my own daughter. Margaret, Harrison said after hanging up one of the calls, we need to move quickly. If Victoria has already attempted to access or transfer funds, we must freeze everything before any damage is done. I nodded slowly. My voice wasn't fully steady yet, but it was stronger than before. Do it. That one sentence surprised even me. Do it. No hesitation. No second guessing. Because something had changed inside me. The version of me that would have protected Victoria, defended her, made excuses for her behavior. That woman was gone. Within the next hour, everything started unfolding at a speed I could barely keep up with. Bank accounts linked to Robert's estate were flagged and frozen. Any active transactions were immediately halted. Harrison explained that legally, Victoria had no authority to control any of those assets, especially not under false claims. At the same time, a formal complaint was filed. Fraud, forgery, and elder abuse. Words I never imagined would be connected to my own child were now part of an official report. Then came the next step. The call, Harrison said, looking at me carefully. Are you ready? I took a deep breath. For a brief moment, doubt tried to creep back in. Not about the truth, but about the confrontation. This was still my daughter. No matter what she had done, that connection doesn't disappear overnight. But then, her words echoed in my mind. Find somewhere else to die. And, just like that, the doubt disappeared. I'm ready, I said. Harrison dialed the number and placed the phone on speaker. It rang twice. Then she answered. Mom? Victoria's voice came through, slightly irritated, slightly distracted. Where are you? I've been trying to reach you. The audacity. I leaned forward slightly. I'm not at the motel anymore, Victoria. A pause. Oh, well that's good. Listen, there's some issue with the bank accounts. Kevin says. I'm at Harrison Fitzgerald's office. Silence. Complete silence. I could almost hear her thinking. Calculating. Harrison, she repeated slowly. Yes, Dad's lawyer. The one who handled the will. The one who said there was a reading that I was apparently traveling during. Another pause. This one longer. Heavier. Mom, I don't know what you think I think I've discovered that you lied to me. My voice didn't shake this time. It was calm. Controlled. Clear. I think I've discovered that you showed me forged documents. That you took control of assets that were never yours. And that you threw me out of my own house based on a lie. Her tone changed instantly. The softness disappeared. Now there was tension. Mom, you're confused. You've been under a lot of stress. Grief does that to people. Someone is clearly influencing you. I almost laughed. Even now, she was trying to manipulate me. Victoria, I interrupted. Let me make this very simple for you. I paused deliberately. Let the silence build. You didn't inherit everything. Another pause. In fact, you didn't inherit anything. This time, I heard her breathing change. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the real will. The one you tried to hide. The one that leaves the house and 70% of all assets to me. That's not possible. Her voice cracked slightly now. Oh, it gets better, I continued, my tone sharper now. That 10 million Dad left you? The one in trust. Silence. It's gone. What? You violated the clause, Victoria. The one about treating me with dignity and respect. You didn't just fail it, you destroyed it. That's ridiculous. No, I said firmly. What's ridiculous is that you thought I wouldn't find out. There was no response this time. Just silence. And for the first time, my daughter had nothing to say. The silence on the phone stretched longer than anything I had ever experienced with Victoria. It wasn't just quiet, it was heavy, suffocating, like she was trying to process a reality that refused to fit inside her version of the world. Then finally, she spoke again, but her voice had changed. The confidence was gone. The control she always carried in her tone, completely fractured. Mom, she said slowly, carefully, you don't understand what you're doing right now. I leaned back in the chair slightly. Harrison watched quietly beside me, letting me handle it. No, Victoria, I replied calmly, for the first time in a long time. I understand everything. Another pause. I could hear faint background noise on her end. Maybe Kevin was there. Maybe they were together, trying to figure out how to fix something that had already collapsed. Now the silence changed. It wasn't just absence of words anymore. It was discomfort. Real discomfort. I didn't mean it like that, she said quickly. I was angry. I was stressed. Things got out of hand. No, I said firmly again. Things didn't get out of hand. You made decisions. Deliberate ones. Repeated ones. My voice stayed steady, but something inside me felt stronger with every word. You forged documents, Victoria. You lied to lawyers. You manipulated me when I was at my lowest. And you took control of assets that were never yours. I didn't forge anything, she snapped suddenly, her tone shifting back into defense mode. Kevin handled all of that. She stopped mid-sentence. And I heard it. Kevin. That name changed everything in her tone. Because suddenly, she wasn't just defending herself anymore. She was protecting him too. Harrison leaned slightly forward, whispering, let her keep talking. I stayed quiet. On the phone, Victoria continued, but now she was spiraling. Mom, listen to me. There's a bigger situation here you don't understand. Dad's finances, his investments, everything is complicated. Kevin thinks there are legal risks involved with how things were structured. That's why we needed control over the accounts. Stop, I said again. My voice was colder now. I don't care about Kevin's theories. I don't care about explanations you're building after the fact. A pause. What I care about, I continued, is that you made a choice. You chose money over me. Silence again. But this time, she didn't interrupt. Because deep down, even she knew I was right. Harrison finally reached over and pressed a button, signaling something on his desk phone. I could see movement starting around him now. Real action. Victoria, I said quietly, there's something else you should know. She didn't respond. The accounts are frozen. A sharp intake of breath came through the line. And the authorities have been notified. Now there was no more pretending. No more excuses. No more manipulation. Just reality. Mom, her voice broke slightly now, please, we can fix this. We can talk privately. I'll explain everything. Kevin and I. No, I interrupted one last time. This time, there was finality in my voice. You don't get to explain your way out of this anymore. A long silence followed. And then, very quietly, she said something I didn't expect. I didn't think you would fight back. That sentence hung in the air like a confession. Not of innocence, but of assumption. She had never seen me as someone who could stand up. And that was her biggest mistake. Her last sentence didn't sound like anger. It sounded like realization. Like a crack forming in something she had always believed was unbreakable. I didn't think you would fight back. Those words stayed in the air longer than anything else she had said. Not because they were loud, but because they revealed everything. Not confusion. Not misunderstanding. Expectation. Victoria had never seen me as someone who could stand up. In her mind, I was supposed to absorb everything quietly. Accept it. Disappear when told. Survive without resistance. But I wasn't that version of myself anymore. I spent my entire life fighting for you, I said quietly into the phone. My voice was steady now, but heavier. And you assumed I would never fight for myself. There was no immediate response. For the first time, Victoria didn't interrupt. Didn't justify. Didn't spin a story. Because something was shifting on her end too. I could hear faint movement in the background. Kevin's voice, low and tense, speaking quickly. Papers being shuffled. Panic disguised as planning. Harrison leaned closer to me and whispered, they're realizing the accounts are frozen. I nodded slightly, but kept my focus on the call. You don't understand, Victoria finally said again, but this time her voice wasn't sharp. It was unstable. This is bigger than you think. If you push this further, it won't just be legal trouble. There are people involved. Investors. Partners. If everything collapses. I cut her off immediately. Victoria. My tone was calm, but final. I don't care. Silence again. It hit her harder than any anger would have. Because anger still means engagement. But indifference means distance. I don't care about your investors. I don't care about your explanations. I care about the fact that you destroyed me when I was at my weakest. My grip tightened slightly on the armrest. You didn't just take money, I continued. You took my home. You took my dignity. And you tried to erase me like I didn't matter. Now her breathing changed again. Faster. Less controlled. Mom, please. But this time it didn't sound like manipulation. It sounded like fear. Real fear. I can fix this, she said quickly. Just don't involve the police. We can return everything. We can undo it. Kevin knows people. Stop, I said again. And this time, I wasn't even raising my voice. That was the most powerful part. You don't get to undo this, I said slowly. You made choices. Now you live with them. A long silence followed. This time, no interruptions. No arguments. No deflection. Just the sound of reality settling in. Then, very quietly, Kevin's voice came through in the background. Not directly on the phone, but close enough that I could hear him clearly. We need to shut everything down. Now. That sentence changed the air completely. Because it confirmed what Harrison had already suspected. This wasn't just family manipulation. This was structured. Planned. Organized. Harrison straightened beside me. That's enough, he said softly. We've got what we needed. But I didn't hang up yet. because I wanted Victoria to hear one last thing. Victoria, I said. Yes, her voice came quickly now. Desperate. I want you to remember something. A pause. I didn't take anything from you. Silence. You gave it away the moment you decided I didn't matter. And with that, I ended the call. The room fell completely quiet. Harrison didn't speak immediately. Neither did I. It felt like the air itself had changed. He finally stood up and adjusted his glasses. They're going to escalate now, he said calmly. Legal pressure, probably attempts to negotiate. Maybe even threats. I looked at him, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid of any of it. Let them try, I said quietly, because something inside me had already crossed a line. Not into revenge, not into anger, but into clarity. And once you see people clearly, you can never unsee them again.